For decades now, my friend Brian Stiller has been leading evangelicals on the Canadian and global scene, various roles and responsibilities, leading Tyndale College as well as his years with the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. He's been a marvelous spokesman for God and good, and it's so good to have you back. It's good to see you in person. I love you.
Good to be with you, John.
Thank you, man.
And I love what you're doing here.
Thanks, buddy.
It's remarkable to see the spark that you brought, and I'm thrilled. I was ticked when you left Canada years ago.
Oh, well,
and I'm thrilled that you came back.
I'm glad immigration let me back. Listen, Brian, we talked to you on Monday and want to get to Nepal and Kathmandu, just where you were. And you just landed, so we're very, very grateful for Brian being here. Okay, so today I just looked on purpose. I knew you were coming. New York Times, yes. Today's edition, no mention of Nepal. I looked at the Globe and Mail today, one of Canada's national papers, no mention of Nepal. And it is fascinating to me, which is even more important while you're here, is that it's been less than 3 weeks, major earthquake, all the world's attention there, and then you've got these major weeklies and dailies not mentioning it. So welcome back. Tell us what you've found out, what's been going on, and we want to try to be proactive and continue to help as Crossroads Relief and Development.
This 30 million populated landlocked country north of India, south of China.
Right.
In 1950, you had 7 families that are Christians. Today, about 1.4 million. It is one of the most spectacular areas of spiritual growth that I've seen anywhere in the world. But it's lost because it's known by Mount Everest and by the Hindu temples. Mm-hmm. And so here on the ground, when you see an earthquake of 7.8 on the 25th of April at 11:45 in the morning on a Saturday, schools were out, churches were on. When that happens, then you see here the kind of destruction that occurs. The churches, this church had 120 in it, 30 were killed.
That was a church.
Including the pastor. That's the church right there.
Wow.
And so 30 died, including the pastor.
Oh.
And as you travel through the countryside, you see place after place destroyed. Kathmandu wasn't hit as hard as they thought, but these pictures are within Kathmandu, or this is a city just outside of Kathmandu, and locations are crumble, and then next to it, the buildings stand.
Strange.
But the real factor, the ongoing factor, even though we've had the second earthquake, is the psychological fear that grips the people. So as we drove north, and here we're driving north through to Tibet, and you see people sitting outside. They're afraid to even go into their small buildings.
Traumatized.
Because they know another earthquake's coming. The last one, I think, was in 1938, and there's been warnings that there's one every 60 to 80 years. There's been warnings. They've been rebuilding many of their buildings with earthquake proof, but there are many buildings that simply couldn't stand the power of that earthquake.
Sure.
And so you've got this psychological, this paranoia, this fear that's very understandable, that more quakes are coming, and if we're in buildings, we'll lose our lives. And then you've got people who have nowhere to go now because their buildings, as we drove north towards Tibet, we drove through all these villages, which was in the earthquake zone, and just building after building after building just decimated. And people looking for food, looking for shelter, and looking for hope.
So tell us how that emerging church and those emerging church leaders in Nepal, in Kathmandu, are responding, and then that leads us to how we can try to help through Crossroads Relief and Development.
There are two forces coming together. One is you've got pastors, get about 3,000 churches on the ground, and under the National Churches Fellowship of Nepal, which is like the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada or the National Association of Evangelicals in the U.S.
Right.
This is the national body.
Right.
ERDO, which is a Canadian relief and development agency, is working with them in providing two things. First of all, a kit for $175.
Tell us what this kit does.
That it provides food, it provides utensils for them to survive. That's $175. Or $250 provides a small Quonset hut for which is made out of metal, which gives them permanent protection from the monsoons, which are coming in June and are for 3 months.
Okay, so we have a number on the screen, and for those of you that have been with Crossroads Relief and Development for years, you know how we work. Anything that we bring in to this Nepal effort, this $175 challenge, and this challenge, and the other is
$250 for the shelter.
So if you can give on those exact numbers or anything toward this effort, because of our relationship with the Canadian government as a recognized charity in Canada, we can see those numbers, those dollars, doubled, matched. We need your help today. Brian has been there, he's talked to the leaders, he knows these organizations. When it comes to church leaders and quality, Brian Stiller is the gold standard. He knows exactly what he's talking about. He's been there just getting back. In fact, we talked to you on Monday in Kathmandu of this week, and you had another earthquake that happened on Wednesday?
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning, and you had just left?
Left at 7:30, and the earthquake happened at 7:20.
Wow.
So we got out just in time.
Praise God for that. All right. So, last thing, you talked to us on Monday about the family. There was a family. Tell us, we just got about 30 seconds left. Try to
drove into the city, looking at all the destruction, saw a woman wave. Santa, she's a executive assistant, says, "I recognize her." Now, out of 30 million people in Nepal, how would you recognize one woman?
Yeah.
She called and she said, "Would you come in and visit us?" We walked through the bottom. There we found a family.
Look at that.
The wife is a Christian. Husband won't let her go to church, but she goes something now and then. I talked to the teenager. "Do you know Jesus?" "We know about him." "Do you know how to read the Bible?" Yes. I had prayer with them. They wanted to have a picture taken with me. John,
you got to share the gospel.
Yeah, John, it was one of those little sparkling moments in the midst of dust and destruction and rubble.
And you said a stench, there was smell.
Oh, it was awful. And in that moment, the Lord gives you that little opportunity of talking about him to young people. They speak English, they're bright, they're living in poverty, they're living in slums, they're living in the brokenness of that world. And my prayer is, as I left in my card, I said, "Please email me."
Yeah.
My prayer was to them, and I prayed that they would discover Christ, and Christ would bring them to himself.
I love you. You're off to a rock. Be careful.